Arabic and Mandarin are considered to be two of the most challenging languages on earth. But I've studied them both over the last 5 years. ودلوقتي أنا بتكلم اللغة العربية اللهجة المصرية تحديدا. And today I want to answer a question that I get asked all the time. Which of these two languages is actually harder to learn? What's up, everybody? My name is Brian Wiles, and 5 years ago I decided that I wanted to learn a new language that would open my eyes to another side of the world. I thought about learning Russian or Hindi or Japanese, but in the end I narrowed it down to Arabic and Mandarin for 3 reasons. 1, a lot of people speak them all around the world. 2, Arabic and Chinese culture are ridiculously awesome. And 3, they're hard, like really hard. Now, I know that might sound a little silly. Why would someone go out of their way to learn a difficult language? Because, in my opinion, it's so worth it. When I speak Arabic with people on the street in New York City, their faces light up because, honestly, it's not something they usually hear from a guy who looks like me. Trust me, if you put in the time to learn a difficult language, you'll be rewarded so many times over in smiles, in respect, and in your own deeper knowledge of the world. So, if you're looking for the ultimate challenge, which one should you pick? Mandarin or Arabic? Well, let's break down 3 really important differences between these two languages. First, pronunciation. Mandarin, of course, has tones, which can seem completely bewildering if you've never studied a tonal language before. The word ma, for instance, sounds very similar to ma, and ma. Yeah, it's tricky. And if you want people to understand what you're saying, you'll need to pronounce the different tones quickly and correctly. It gets easier over time, but in the beginning, I had trouble saying even a simple phrase correctly. Arabic pronunciation, on the other hand, requires making a number of sounds that will be totally unfamiliar to most learners. I will put qaf, ayn, and ha at the top of this list, but there are definitely others that continue to trip me up to this day. Most spoken dialects are a bit easier than MSA in terms of pronunciation, but it can still take months, if not years, to feel comfortable speaking naturally. Point number 2. Reading. This one is a doozy. So Arabic, of course, has its own phonetic script, which you'll need to learn if you want to be able to read. But actually, that's the easy part. The hard part is that most Arabic text doesn't include symbols for vowels. They're just left out. What does that mean? Well, it's almost impossible to sound things out. You basically need to memorize what each individual word looks like and sounds like. If you try to guess based on just reading out the letters, you're more likely than not to mispronounce the word or say a different word entirely. Not good. But when it comes to difficulty reading, it's tough to beat Mandarin. Officially, written Chinese includes over 50,000 unique characters. Most dictionaries only include 20,000 or so, but that's still a lifetime's worth of memorization for most of us. Some characters do include little hints about their meaning, but if you really want to learn to read Chinese, or dare I even say write it, you'll need to invest some serious time and effort. Finally, point number 3. Grammar. Now, this might actually come as a surprise to you, but Chinese grammar is actually pretty easy. It might seem a bit unfamiliar at first, but once you get a handle on the basics, it's way easier than, say, English. Arabic grammar is much more complicated. Gendered nouns, verb agreement, number agreement, comparatives, negation. Arabic grammar is tougher than Mandarin pretty much any way you slice it. And that point is huge because a lot of language learners get frustrated by hard grammar and give up entirely. And we don't want you to do that. Now, some of you might be saying, but Brian, Arabic has so many different dialects. If I learn Mandarin instead, I'll be able to speak with everyone in China and Taiwan, right? Well, not really. First of all, Mandarin is one of many Chinese dialects, most of which are very different from one another, much more so than, say, Egyptian Arabic and Levantine Arabic. And Mandarin itself actually sounds very different in different parts of China. A Beijing accent and a Chengdu accent, for instance, sound nothing alike, to the point that even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand what's being said. All of which is to say, whether you learn Arabic or Mandarin, you'll need to adapt to a range of different dialects if you want to communicate with a majority of the population. There's one last point I want to make before we talk about which one of these languages is truly harder to learn, and that's the difference in the availability of learning material. If you want to learn Mandarin, there's endless content out there. Textbooks, podcasts, websites, dictionaries, proficiency tests, whatever you're looking for, it exists. You can work your way through a dozen different courses that will take you from 0 to fluent, in theory. For Arabic, the situation is much trickier. Yes, courses do exist, mostly for MSA, which I actually don't recommend you study. You can check out this video for more information on that. But if you want to learn a spoken dialect, it can be really hard to find high-quality learning material. There are a few books and apps that can point you in the right direction, but you're probably going to need to ask native speakers for a lot of help and figure out plenty of things on your own. Maybe that sounds great to you, maybe it sounds terrible, but it's something you should be aware of going in. So let's answer our big question. And if you're considering learning Arabic or Mandarin, definitely keep watching because I'm also going to talk about which one of these two languages I think is actually more useful for most learners. Okay, Arabic versus Mandarin, which one is harder? In my opinion, Mandarin is slightly harder than Arabic. Yes, Chinese grammar is easier and there's definitely more learning material out there, but getting a really solid handle on the tones and memorizing those characters just requires so much time and energy. That said, I love both these languages so much and I've learned an unbelievable amount from speaking them with people from the Arab world and from China and Taiwan. But if you're still undecided about which one you should learn, I do have a recommendation, and that is Arabic. But let me tell you why. I think you might be surprised. At the moment, studying Mandarin is extremely popular. Millions of students from around the world are learning it in school, online, through apps, etc. And it's easy to see why. About 1 billion people speak Mandarin worldwide, and the Chinese economy has been booming for 3 decades. So the thinking goes that there will be lucrative job opportunities for people who become fluent. But here's the other side of that coin. The Chinese population is in fact shrinking. By the end of the century, it's expected to be about half of what it is today. And many experts believe that the Chinese economic boom is starting to slow down. That, coupled with the fact that the labor market there is already pretty saturated with people who speak both Mandarin and English, means that those great jobs are getting tougher to come by. And in my opinion, that trend is only going to accelerate. So what about Arabic? Well, relatively few students in the West study spoken Arabic. Yes, many Muslims study the Arabic of the Quran, but students of Egyptian or Levantine or Gulf Arabic are pretty few and far between. That means that people who are fluent in both English and Arabic really can stand out in the job market, both in the West and in the Arab world. But even more significant, in my opinion, is that we in the West have so many misconceptions about the Arab world. We tend to see a very specific and one-sided narrative in the media that just isn't accurate. So learning Arabic and actually talking with people from that part of the world can help us all understand what's really going on and what people there are really like. And honestly, I think that's a good thing for people the world over. I hope this video was useful to anyone out there who's thinking about learning one of these two amazing languages. Studying them has been a real joy for me, and I hope it is for you as well. Leave a comment and let me know what you thought of this video. I know this style is a little different than my usual content, but hey, you gotta experiment sometimes. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.